Okay, Sarah, thanks for being with us again. You're currently working as a social care advisor. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about what you do and how things are going for you at the moment.
I work as a social care advisor, supporting directors in their role in implementing policy and operational requirements. I work sometimes with the Local Government Association as a care and health improvement advisor, and we particularly are interested in providing peer support to local authorities so that we can make sure we're sharing best practice, we're helping people to implement guidance, we're making sure that we're doing the right things by people so that we're maximising people's outcomes and service options and design flows behind that, so that we're absolutely offering a personalised approach. And we're making sure that we support leaders to do the right thing in what is a very complex and challenging environment. As well as the LGA advise councils separately and independently, particularly focusing on the relationships with the NHS that they have locally, and also on making sure that people who have to go into hospital mainly return home with the support that they need. And if there are alternatives required, that's done in the best possible way. One of the things we're really keen to make sure is people don't make long-term decisions as a result of a short-term crisis. And that's been particularly an issue through the times of COVID, and making sure that people do have the range of opportunities that they need to return home.
Okay, that's excellent. And you were previously Director of Adult Social Care at Surrey County Council. Obviously, there's, social care has been really hot on the agenda over the last few years and almost the last decade now. How have the challenges being faced by local authorities changed more recently in the last few years? Okay. Hi, Sarah. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, I've got it back now. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm really sorry, something came in. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now, perfect, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was Director of Adult Social Care in Surrey from 2009, and I think that was just after austerity had really begun to kick in. And I think local government has taken the real hit in the last 10 years. And I think with the increasing demographics of older people, numbers of older people increasing, and the need for increased support as people live longer, it has had a devastating impact on budgets for local government. And actually, councils have done really well in balancing that. So they've really taken on the challenge of efficiency. They've really looked at cost of care, the unit costs of services that they might be providing. They've really looked at how to manage staff more efficiently, whether it's about combining back offices, whether it's about making sure that teams are very locally engaged, implementing the personalisation agenda so that we take a strength-based approach and really support people to access the support that they can find in their community, and social care complements that to make sure that they're providing the right care at the right time for people, and making sure that it's much more of an integrated approach to care, so health and social care working together to support people. And actually the evidence shows that people have been supported, that local government have done that well, but now the crisis has really hit hard as other services are hit, the high streets are hit, and other things come into play. And I think that's the overwhelming experience. It was in Surrey, we got to a position where we'd made a lot of the savings that we could make. It's really hard to keep pushing on what are essential services. And now councils, with the demands of COVID and the difficulties that we all know about in the care market in being able to respond to this, it makes the financial pressure even more. And I think the other part of this, it's not just about seeing social care even with health in isolation, because we're all part of bigger communities. So what's going to keep us at home is, and living independently, is access to those other voluntary sector providers, the voluntary sector support that's so invaluable, but also libraries, sports centres. We're not only talking about older people, we're talking about people with mental health issues and people with a learning disability who still want to get out and about and access all those services. And if we're starting to see those closed down pre-COVID, and not being so well resourced because people can't afford to resource them, councils can't afford to resource them, then that's ironically putting more pressure back on the health and social care budget. So it is very much seeing people as part of that community system. And the experience post-COVID has been really impressive. I mean, during COVID, health and social care particularly have come together and implemented a lot of things that probably would have taken a lot longer had they not had the pressure of the crisis. But what we've seen, particularly I've seen in the Southeast where I largely work, is people really coming together to make a difference and to work differently. And the challenge now, which wherever you are as a director of adult social care, is to maintain that change in leadership behaviour, the change in way teams work together, and the change in the conversation that we have with people about how they use services, because certainly there's been a real change in the way that people access. Some of it has not been good. People have been reluctant to access services. So it's about how do we encourage the right people to come back to accessing services for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned there the working of health and social care, and you're in the process of authoring a report, I believe, working alongside the local government association in that, the high impact change model, managing transfers of care between hospital and home. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about the report and also how it will be used to change practices within both the NHS and with local authorities.
Yes, certainly. The high impact change model came of some work that the Local Government Association did with the Department of Health when I was working in previous role in the LGA. And we had a team of advisors, health and social care, talking with and visiting systems around the country to see what were the real issues that were getting in the way of efficient flow of patients and through hospital, but also most importantly, people making the right decisions about where they wanted to go after a stay in hospital. Mm-hmm. And out of that came a number of things, and originally it was 8 that were really high impact changes that would make a difference to the flow and people going to the right place. And it started sort of at the front door. And one of the criticisms of the model actually is that it starts at the front door of the hospital, and we're now starting to develop a model which is about how do you get the prevention right in the community. Mm-hmm. But it starts at the front door with really focusing on if someone is going in to the hospital for an emergency treatment, or because something's broken down at home, or something has happened in their condition to make it absolutely that they must be admitted, that actually the planning starts from that very first point of admission. Mm-hmm. So we start thinking, when is the person going home, what needs to be in place, and how do you make sure that you actually get some of those conversations happening either with the person themselves or their families or their carers, so that you're taking that really active approach. And that's hard when everybody's under a lot of pressure to be thinking about the next stage and the things that might follow. Mm-hmm. And the 8 high impact changes sort of, they track the person through the hospital, giving advice about what should be in place. And it's more than a report, it's actually a self-assessment model for systems to use to see where they are on a grid, to say, are we actually, do we even recognise this issue? Have we got plans for it? Have we got it partially in place? Or actually, we're really good at this, we've got it cracked and we're doing this. So we're either not really thinking about it or exemplary. And we gave it as a model for people to use together, partly to start systems having those difficult conversations about, look, this is what we should be doing and we're not doing it So why aren't we, and what can we do about it? And the LGA offers support to systems to be able to have some of those conversations. The things that were really tricky were around, without doing a whole presentation on the high impact change model, the things that were really tricky were the things around 24/7 and 7-day working. There was always the tension that acute hospitals felt, well, we work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and externally you only work 9 to 5, and that's why we have such. There was a lot of evidence to show that people didn't get discharged at the weekend. But actually, when you really get underneath why people aren't getting discharged at the weekend, there are a whole host of reasons, a lot of them very practical, like transport and pharmacy, and making sure that people can be discharged at the weekend, as well as some of the things around care homes not wanting to accept discharges at the weekend, and domiciliary care providers. So it's always 6 of one and half dozen of the other. There's never actually any point in playing the blame game, because it will always bounce back that there's something that's going on either in the hospital, whatever, that will show why someone can't be discharged. So getting people to work 7 days a week, social workers in the hospital, therapists, other people, the care market to respond 7 days a week, is something that actually we were getting there across the country before COVID, but that's really increased during COVID. And alongside that kind of model, another of the high impact changes is the concept of trusted assessment. Actually, you can trust each other as professionals to assess on your behalf, at least to get someone to the right place, either home or into a step down bed or another setting, and then do the full assessment when someone's there and focus on the particular therapy or social work support that they might need, so that we're not having, which has always been a criticism of services, that, you know, some older person or the family have to answer, you know, 5 or 6 times, what's your name, where do you live, what do you want to do, you know, all your capabilities before you've even, you know, got home. And then another big high impact change challenge is the issue around choice, and people being able to make choices about care homes that they want to access, and also the length of time it can take to make that choice given availability of care homes. And that became very complicated and had caused a lot of upset for families and people, and also a lot of delay in the hospitals. Again, I think the COVID experience has moved that on, and it's one of the things in the new discharge guidance that will be coming out that people want to really clarify, so that people don't have to make that long-term choice in a hospital setting, but actually the patient, the person themselves, much more involved in that, and they can make it once they've left hospital. So the 8 high impact changes then became 9 in the most recent rewrite, because we included homelessness. And that's really important, because a lot of people suffer from conditions that need admission to hospital, or at least need treatment of some kind. And then it's hard if they haven't got a home to go to. Quite rightly, people feel really distressed, actually. Some health staff in discharging out back on the streets when they've just spent some time looking after them. So we put that on, and we did a lot of work to look at what would be the guidance. And now we've just updated it to be responding to COVID, and again revising it according to what people have told us is best practice under COVID experiences.
Okay, that's excellent. And obviously a central component of the framework is this principle of home first. I was wondering if you could just run us through what this is, why it's important, and also how you believe we can achieve it.
Okay, so Home First has been a philosophy for a long time, and you know, those of us who've been practicing social work and are as old as me remember many years ago that the idea that people should go home after a time in hospital was really clear, and we would do everything we could to get them home with home care or domiciliary care support. and people would only go into residential or nursing care if they absolutely needed it. And the numbers were different previously, but actually in the recent years, with the demographics increasing and the pressure on the NHS, in some places we have seen an increase in the number of people being discharged, particularly to care homes, residential care homes, who maybe don't have dementia and don't have nursing needs. And actually, is that the right outcome for them? What we've seen through the work of John and the work of Newton Europe and a lot of other advisors is that it's really clear that people's outcomes are best achieved back in their own home, and that actually people with a period of actually therapy-led reablement actually do really well when they get back home, they get back into a familiar environment, they see their local friends and family, they make their connections, and they really thrive at home. And the difficulty is they look very different in a hospital bed where they may have been for some time, lost some muscle usage because they've been in bed. You know, there's all the stuff about how your muscles and your general physical ability depreciates when you're in bed for a long time. They've lost a bit of confidence. That's a major factor. And they've, you know, not been communicating with people as much. They've not seen familiar faces. So they may have lost a little bit of their confidence in talking to people and engaging with people. So the real principle is to get people out of hospital and home first as quickly as possible with the support they need. Now that might be that they need to have 24-hour care at home, but there's no reason why we can't be doing that, either through the live-in models that Elder offer, or that they need a little bit of live-in support for a short period of time. And I think the Elder offer on discharge demonstrates that, where consultants in hospital, nursing staff in hospital feel concerned about someone going home to maybe get care during the day and then be on their own at night. A lot of families feel anxious about that. It's the night time that they worry about. And they're not convinced when people say, oh, they'll be okay with reablement at home, because they're seeing in that hospital bed a very vulnerable person. And they may live miles away and have lots of other responsibilities, really hard for them. And so the Home First principle is all about getting people home, but with the right support that they need. And that might need an intensive overnight stay. It might need longer term overnight stay if necessary. But what it absolutely will need is a period of reablement to support someone to gain the life that they had before back, really. And it's about re-establishing their life. They might have some more needs if they've had a stroke, or they've had a fall, or they've had some sort of replacement, or they've lost a bit of confidence. And so it might need that it's more support than they had before, but actually it's making sure we assess that in their own home, and that we put all the right support around them. Now, the evidence is really clear that 90% of people can go home straight from hospital with little or no support, or from hospital with reablement support. And yet what we've seen traditionally figures is not that reflected in the discharges that we've made pre-COVID. Now, whether COVID changes that for people because they don't want to go to care homes, or they feel safer going into their own homes, we'll have to see. And certainly the evidence that's coming out from the first testing pilot of domiciliary care workers is showing that actually they tested about 8,000 hours of home care and showed that actually they weren't positive, and that the hygiene levels were good, the infection control levels were good, at home. So it is a real option for the future as we come out of COVID, as well as just being the right thing for people.
Yeah, you've touched on. I think you've touched on there a lot of the key benefits of care in the home, home first discharge to assess. I guess one of the challenges that people face, particularly if they're receiving money from the local authority, is how they pay for it. And I was wondering if you could potentially outline the potential challenges that there are in achieving Home First when we have self-funders on the one hand, and also those who are part or fully funded by a local authority, and whether there's any inequality between the choice of the families and the end user for both of those different groups of people, trying to pay for their care.
Yeah, so we've really learned from COVID on this, that actually if you take away the funding issue at the point of discharge, then people choose, and it frees up the ability for people to go home with support. And that's what we're trying to build into guidance for the future, that people do have and they've always had, as a self-funder, the ability to get reablement at home free for up to 6 weeks, as long as the reablement is needed. It's a service provided by local authorities and in the some places, in partnership with the NHS, and that works really well. And I think that we've learned that certainly in COVID that's worked even better, because people have been able to move straight home and get that support. And even when even when they've gone into step-down beds and they needed a bedded option of rehab and reablement, that's worked well. So that's what we're trying to reflect as we go forward. In terms of then what happens with self-funders, I think the issue is the myth that being supported at home is more expensive. Needs people, and it's one of the things that I think it would be really good for us to do, is to support self-funders in making those what are commissioning decisions on behalf, often, or in partnership with their relatives. And they want to absolutely do the right thing and what they see to be the safest thing, but they're often not fully aware of what the choices might be. And some people don't want to talk to social services, or they don't want to engage in that, and they might make what they think is the safest decision for their family member, and it might not be the full range of options that are available. So if you're a self-funder, it's really worth looking at what are the actual costs of someone being supported at home, whether it be with 24/7 care and a living carer, or whether it be after a period of reablement with domiciliary care. And when you start to really look at what that care costs and how it could work, I think in some parts of the country, it will be cheaper than opting for a residential care option. And the benefit of that is it might only be that living at home can continue for 2 or 3 years, but it might be that it continues for the remaining lifetime of their